Okay, in the previous video, I explained why 10 divided by 0 is impossible. It's because when we ask the right question about division, which is how many zeros does it take to add up to 10, the answer is there is no answer. So because there is no answer, mathematicians have come up with a way of answering the question without giving it an answer, if that makes sense. We call this ratio undefined. 10 divided by 0, we call that an undefined ratio. Because there is no number, you cannot give an answer to that. It doesn't have an answer. So we call it undefined. Now, I'm going to show it to you from another perspective, which is related perspective. 10 divided by 0. And we'll talk about all possible scenarios involving 0 and division in this video. 10 divided by 0 is asking how many zeros does it take to add up to 10. So basically it's saying 0, how many of them? Oh, how many zeros? When you're adding zeros over and over, you're multiplying them by something. So how many zeros, 0 times what, equals 10? Well, we know that 0 times anything equals 0. So clearly, this is impossible. 0 times anything is 0. So this won't ever happen. Now, let's look at the other. Let's flip this over. How about 0 divided by 10? That's asking how many tens does it take to add up to 0. So you take 10 and how many of them, that's multiplication again, how many tens added together does it take to make 0? 10 times what number equals 0? Is there a number that works there? Of course. It's 0. 10 times 0 equals 0. And that's the only thing that fits. So we conclude that 0 divided by 10 equals 0. Now a lot of students memorize gimmicks like if 0 is under the line, it's undefined. There's no need to memorize some silly gimmick if you understand what the question is asking. How many zeros does it take to make 10? 0 times what? Well, 0 times nothing. There is nothing that works. It's impossible. Other way around, how many tens does it take to add to 0? 10 times what? How many tens add together? So multiplication means it takes 0 of them. 10 times 0 equals 0. Okay, now here is the real mystery. What about if I divide 0 by 0? I told you on this page that, and in the previous video, that if I divide something other than 0 by 0, I can't find an answer to that. It's an undefined ratio because it doesn't have an answer. There is no reasonable answer. It's not possible. But is it possible to add up zeros and make 0? Yeah, it is. Think about that. And I'm going to lead you through the analysis of this. But we could look at this and say, well, you know that anything divided by itself is 1, right? Anything divided by itself is 1, so could 0 divided by 0 equal 1? But then you've also learned that anything divided by 0 is undefined. So could it be undefined? But you've also learned that 0 divided by anything is 0. So could it be 0? Well, let's investigate from the same perspective that we investigated before. How many zeros does it take? 0 plus 0 plus 0. How many times do I have to add 0 together? That's multiplication again. How many zeros does it take to add up to 0? What could fit in here? Think about that. Pause the video if you want to think about it for a few minutes. As it turns out, anything could fit in there. Any number could fit in there. So what we have concluded is that 0 divided by 0 could be any number. And in fact, it could be no number at all. It could also be undefined. But you can very easily see how it could be any number, because 0 times anything equals 0. And because of the fact that it could be any number, mathematicians have coined the term indeterminate. Zero divided by 0 is an indeterminate ratio because there is no one reasonable answer. The correct answer cannot be determined. It's an indeterminate ratio. Now, if we think about this 10 divided by 0 ratio being undefined, and 0 divided by 10 ratio equaling 0. Here's a little extra bonus material for students who have talked about slope. Students often learn about slope of a vertical line and slope of a horizontal line, and they have to memorize, oh, well, one of these is 0 and one of them is undefined, but I don't remember which. Well, if you remember what slope is the change. Delta is a symbol that represents change. The change in y divided by the change in x. In a vertical line, the change in x is, well, how much y is changing, x is not changing. So if the change in x is 0, if x isn't changing, the y coordinate is changing as I move up and down. If the change in x is 0, then I've got a non-zero divided by 0. And that is an undefined slope. So the slope is undefined. A horizontal line, x is changing as we move to the left and to the right, but y is not changing. So there is no change in y. So the numerator of the slope ratio equals 0, but the denominator doesn't. So the slope of a horizontal line is 0. And it's based on understanding the difference between something divided by 0, non-zero divided by 0, which isn't defined, and 0 divided by non-zero, which is 0. If you understand that, you understand why a vertical line has an undefined slope and a horizontal line has a slope of 0.